A chance encounter brings two families together, but one of them hides a sinister plan. During their vacation in Italy, Bjorn, Louise, and their daughter, Agnes, lounge by the pool when fellow tourist Patrick politely asks if a chair beside Bjorn is available. Bjorn removes his items from the chair and generously gives it to him. Later, Bjorn and Louise leave Agnes in the babysitter's care so they can have dinner with the other guests. At dinner, Patrick gets the guests' attention, apologizing for the noise last night. As he banged on doors while trying to find his way, he shares that he wants to meet the other guests since they seem kind and lovely. So he proposes a toast to Italy and to love. Afterward, the guests enjoy some wine while watching a band perform. At night, Bjorn can't sleep, so he goes out on the balcony to get some air. However, Bjorn notices Patrick watching him. He looks away, feeling awkward, and when he looks back, Patrick is gone. The next day, Agnes loses her stuffed rabbit, Ninus, so Bjorn roams the town to search for it. Once he returns to his family, he finds them talking to Patrick and his wife, Karin. Louise asks Patrick and Karin's son what his name is, but he doesn't respond. Patrick introduces him as Abel, explaining that the boy has trouble speaking when pressured. Louise then notes that Agnes misplaced her toy rabbit, and Bjorn searched for it, which Patrick considers heroic. He then invites them for lunch. At the restaurant, they learn that Patrick and his family are from the Dutch countryside. Louise expresses her desire to live outside the city, so Karin suggests they visit their home. Patrick and Karin discover Louise is a vegetarian when the meal comes, and Patrick compliments her since it's good for the environment. Bjorn observes that the Dutch and the Danish are fairly similar in terms of humor and culture. Louise adds they have more in common with Dutch people than with Swedes. Patrick then tells them how boring and political his former Swedish colleague was when he worked in medicine, revealing that he's a doctor. Over the last part of their vacation, the two families remain in contact and have dinner together. Soon, Bjorn and his family return home. After putting Agnes to sleep, Bjorn hands Louise a letter from Patrick and Karin, inviting them to their home in Holland, which he finds odd. The family spends the next few days normally, with the parents proudly watching Agnes in a school performance. One night, the couple invites their friends over for dinner, where Bjorn mentions Patrick and Karin's invitation. They emphasize that they're nice people and that declining might not be polite. Still, Bjorn considers the advantage of having friends out of town and adds that Agnes got along with their son, so Louise considers accepting the invitation. Soon, Bjorn, Louise, and Agnes travel to Holland to visit Patrick's family. As they arrive, Patrick and Karin welcome them to their home. While Patrick invites Bjorn for a beer at their pool, Karin shows Agnes and Louise Abel's room, where Agnes will be sleeping. Agnes greets Abel, but he doesn't respond, so she wonders if he'd forgotten about her. Karin tells Agnes that she'll be sleeping on a mattress on the floor next to Abel's, which the girl finds disappointing. Hence, in the native language, Louise promises her daughter that they'll figure something out so Karin won't understand them. At dinner, Patrick offers some board to Louise, but she declines since she's vegetarian. Still, Patrick insists since it's his favorite part, so Louise reluctantly takes a small bite, saying it's delicious. Bjorn walks outdoors to take out the garbage after dinner. He then scans the area and notices a cabin behind the house. When he turns, he finds Abel watching him. Suddenly, Abel opens his mouth wide, revealing that he doesn't have a tongue. Before Bjorn can say anything, Patrick suddenly calls his son, so he immediately runs back. Later, the two couples talk about Bjorn nearly getting lost on the way to the place when Abel suddenly starts to cry from his room. Despite this, Karin says he's fine and will fall asleep in a minute. Patrick explains that Abel has congenital aglossia, meaning he is born without a tongue. Louise wonders if Abel is in pain, but Patrick assures her that he's not and he just has difficulty expressing himself. Before Bjorn and Louise go to bed, they bring Agnes with them as she can't sleep in Abel's room. Nervous, the girl asks to keep the lights on, but her parents assure her that nothing will happen. The next day, everyone goes to an open field to view a windmill. Climbing up the slide, Agnes wants to go down, but Abel is seated at the bottom. She calls her mother to help, but he doesn't listen to Louise. She then informs Patrick about the situation, so he removes his son from the slide and forces him to apologize to Agnes. When they arrive home, Louise tells Bjorn that she doesn't like being there anymore since Patrick's family isn't pleasant to be around. Suddenly, Karin walks in and invites them to dinner in a restaurant with great local food. Bjorn accepts, and when Karin leaves, he tells Louise that she can survive for another day and a half. At night, they all dress up for dinner, including Agnes. However, the babysitter, Moachid, arrives, surprising Louise since she thought they were bringing the kids. Louise is hesitant to leave her daughter but is left with no choice but to do so. As they arrive at the restaurant, Bjorn and Louise get confused by the Dutch cuisine, so Patrick orders for them, though Louise reminds him that she's a vegetarian. Patrick clarifies that she still eats fish, so technically, she's a pescatarian. He then wonders if the fish industry is not affecting the climate, and this leaves Louise speechless. After dinner and several drinks, both couples start dancing to the music. Suddenly, Patrick and Kyrene get too intimate, leaving the other two uncomfortable. When the bill is in, Patrick manipulates Bjorn into paying for it. On the way home, Patrick starts driving while playing loud music, which frustrates Louise. Kyrene tells him to turn it off and apologize to them. However, he turns it on again and starts driving carelessly. Arriving home, Louise immediately checks on Agnes, who's already asleep. While showering, Louise hears Patrick enter the bathroom and brush his teeth, scaring her. After she showers, she returns to their room and starts seeking comfort from her husband. This leads to them getting intimate, but suddenly, Agnes knocks on the door, asking to sleep on their bed. However, they ignore her and continue. As they make love, Bjorn notices Patrick watching them from the window to the hallway before he leaves. Later, Louise checks on Agnes but doesn't find her in Abel's room. She checks Patrick and Kyrene's room and finds her daughter beside an unclothed Patrick. Carefully, Louise takes her daughter and wakes her husband up, insisting that she wants to go home. The family leaves the house by dawn while the other couple is still asleep. Along the road, Agnes notices that Ninus is missing, so Bjorn stops to check their luggage, but the toy isn't there. Louise promises to buy a new Ninus, but Agnes doesn't want a new one and starts crying. Feeling guilty, Bjorn turns the car around and heads back to the house. Bjorn goes to the house, but Agnes finds Ninus under the car seat as soon as he is gone. With that, Louise exits to get her husband. She finds Bjorn talking with Kyrene and Patrick, telling them false excuses for why they were leaving. Unable to convince them, Bjorn admits that there are things that make them feel that it's better for them to go home. Patrick presses for details, so Louise admits that they keep serving her meat even though she's a vegetarian and that their drive back home last night was uncomfortable for her. This seems to offend Patrick, so Kyrene apologizes, but tells Louise that they could have just told them about the things that made them uncomfortable. Still, Louise argues that taking Agnes to their bed while they were unclothed was crossing the line. However, Kyrene asks her where Louise was and Agnes cried for her, making her speechless. Patrick then apologizes for their failure as a host but encourages them to stay another day, promising that it'll be a great day. Hesitantly, the couple agrees. While Louise assists Kyrene with gardening, Bjorn drives with Patrick. Patrick requests that Bjorn turn on the radio, to which Bjorn complies. They start talking about music, and Patrick shares that he enjoys singing. Afterward, Patrick apologizes for his behavior last night and begins to open up about his feelings. Surprisingly, Bjorn shares that he hides his emotions, leading him to become someone he doesn't want to be. He notes how his tiresome life is a routine of work, being a father, and having dinner with people he dislikes. Patrick then takes Bjorn over a hill and encourages him to yell to release the tension. Then, the two arrive home and continue to bond at the pool while drinking beer. Later, Patrick thanks Louise for assisting Kyrene with the gardening. The kids then announce that they want to show them a dance, so Louise asks them to show it after lunch. Kyrene then orders Agnes to set up the table, which she gladly does. While preparing, Louise cuts herself with a knife, so Bjorn asks Patrick to check since he's a doctor. However, Patrick reveals that he's not a doctor. He lied because he was anxious about meeting new people and wanted to make a good impression. Bjorn wonders about his job, and Patrick admits that he has never worked since he doesn't believe in working. During this, Louise watches Kyrene teach Agnes how to set the table. She starts getting uncomfortable with the family again but doesn't voice it out. While eating, Kyrene wipes Agnes' lips, which bothers Louise. She continues to educate Agnes until Louise asks her to stop since she's her mother. As a result, Kyrene tells her to relax and apologizes. Afterward, the children show their dance, but whenever Abel gets it wrong, Patrick scolds him. This irritates Bjorn and Louise, reminding Patrick that they're only children. Patrick excuses that if his son wants to reach his full potential, he has to concentrate. The man then continues to criticize Abel's performance. This makes Agnes not want to dance anymore, but both Bjorn and Patrick urge her to do it again. Suddenly, Patrick smashes a mug in frustration, scaring Agnes and making Abel cry. Despite this, he just plays the music again, not minding the kids' conditions. Fed up with his behavior, Bjorn shuts the music off. Both Bjorn and Louise point out that what they're doing is wrong, but Kyrene defends that they just do things differently. Nearly in tears, Bjorn argues that it's about doing what's right, like showing their son some love when he's crying. Still, Patrick ignores this and just orders his son to dance again. Unable to handle it anymore, Louise storms off with Bjorn and Agnes following. Bjorn tries to comfort his wife, but she asks him to leave her alone. Later that evening, Bjorn brushes his teeth in the restroom and suddenly, Patrick enters to urinate. Afterward, he hears Patrick scolding Abel, making the boy cry. He then sees Patrick chasing after his son, followed by sounds of struggle. Concerned, Bjorn checks around and sees a television on in the living room. He then hears thuds from the open cabin behind the house, so Bjorn checks and finds a collection of luggages and cameras inside. He then checks upstairs and finds numerous photos of Patrick and Kyrene with other families. Seeing Abel with another couple in one, he notices that Kyrene and Patrick are holding a different child, who's with a different couple in another picture. The pattern continues, with the children being held by a different parent before they appear in a photograph with Patrick and Kyrene. Hearing water from the pool, Bjorn heads outside and finds Abel dead. floating in the water. Horrified, he immediately returns to their room and tells Louise to take Agnes as they will go home. Quietly, the family gets into their car and drives away. While driving, Bjorn sees a car overtaking him, so he drives off the road, causing his vehicle to get stuck. With no cell service, Bjorn steps out to look for help. Seeing a nearby house, he heads there, unaware that Patrick has already found their car. Bjorn reaches the house, but finds it empty. When he returns to the car, his wife and daughter are gone. Terrified, he calls out to them to no avail. Bjorn cries out, holding his daughter's toy as he worries for them. Suddenly, Patrick and Karen arrive with his wife and daughter. It turns out that Louise called Patrick for assistance, still unaware of the danger that Bjorn had discovered. While the others wait in the car, Patrick approaches Bjorn, who pleads for him to let his family go home. Patrick assures him that everything will be fine as long as they do what they say. With no choice, Bjorn is forced to get in the car. On their way back, Agnes wonders about Abel, whom Karen claims is still asleep. Louise becomes worried that Abel is alone, but Karen assures her that Muhajid is with him. Hearing this, Bjorn becomes worried as he cannot tell his family what really happened to the boy. Suddenly, Patrick stops to urinate. Seeing a chance, Bjorn considers driving away, but hesitates long enough to let Patrick return. They get back on the road, but the drive becomes longer than Louise remembers. Agnes shares with her mother that she's scared, but Patrick tells the girl to be quiet. Offended, Louise tries to tell him off, but Bjorn asks his wife to just do what he says. Finally, Patrick stops the car in front of another vehicle. Muhajid exits from the other car and approaches. This scares Agnes, so Louise embraces her daughter, promising that it'll be alright. Louise demands an explanation, but Patrick tells her to shut up again. Bjorn defends his wife, which earns him a punch from Patrick. This scares his wife and daughter, so Louise clutches at Agnes and tries to escape but finds the door locked. Suddenly, Karen tells Agnes to come to her, asking Louise to release the girl. When she doesn't, Karen takes a pair of scissors. At Karen's signal, Muhajid opens the door and restrains Louise while Patrick beats Bjorn up. The deranged couple then works together to cut off Agnes' tongue. After the deed, Muhajid takes the girl away while Patrick continues to drive with Karen, Bjorn, and Louise. Bjorn is stunned while Louise goes wild, crying for her daughter. Soon, Patrick stops at an empty road. He and his wife step out, followed by the shell-shocked couple. Tearfully, Bjorn asks why they're doing this, to which Patrick responds that it's because they let him. He then orders Bjorn and Louise to remove their clothes and go down the trench. In despair and aware that they're defeated, the two comply. Bjorn and Louise embrace as they await their fate. Suddenly, a stone hits Louise's head, causing it to fall. Patrick and Karen then continuously throw stones at them until they die. Patrick and Karen eventually go on another vacation, with Agnes now unwillingly acting as their new daughter.